compelling and why it's an opportunity to invest. I'm your host, Stuart Walters, and we're joined here today by Julian Woodcock, Technical Director of Locksley Resources, ASX code LKY, and US listing OTCQB, LKYRF. Julian will present the company's Mojave Antimony and Rare Earths project in the USA, and also participate in a Q&A post this presentation. Thank you to those who have submitted questions early via email. They will be answered during the Q&A today. A recording of this webinar will be available on Market Opens and Locksley's communication channels within the next 24 hours. It's time to introduce our guest. Julian, welcome to Direct Connect, and over to you.
Hi, Stuart. Thank you very much for chairing this session for us, and I'm very pleased that we're able to have this webinar and communicate through to shareholders and potential investors within Locksley. I'd probably just like to open for those that are online may have seen our announcement this morning, and we've moved into a trading halt. The company is seeking to raise some additional capital. There's been extreme large amount of interest within our project, and we're expecting to be successful with that capital raise, and we will continue to bolster our funds in order to expand on our exploration programs, which I'm going to run through in this webinar. So with that said, just here to talk about the Mojave Project, antimony and rare earths in the USA. So Locksley is a US-focused dual critical mineral explorer with our flagship Mojave Project in California, which is targeting antimony and rare earths. We've also recently completed a North American listing on the OTCQB, and we're focused on bringing in US investors in addition to the ASX, given the asset is located in the US. So there is the usual disclaimer slide, so please take the opportunity to read these at your leisure in the recording subsequent to this webinar. So I'll commence with an overview of the project. So we have a portfolio of antimony and rare earth projects which are located in California in the USA. The map on the right-hand side, the map on the right-hand side shows the location of the tenure. A key aspect you can see there is the Mojave Project North Block abuts and adjoins the tenements held by MP Materials, which are the owners of the Mountain Pass mine, which is North America's only producing rare earth element mine. And our tenure is only 1.4 kilometres from the open pit. The El Campo prospect, which I'll talk about a bit later, is down in the southern part, as you can see on the map there. Again, that is surrounded by the Mount MP Materials claims, which are in the area. Mountain Pass is one of the highest grade rare earth mines in the world, and it's the only producing facility in the US. And with that, it's brought a lot of attention lately. You may have seen online that there's been announced investments by the US Department of Defense, guaranteeing a price floor for their product. In addition to Apple have also highlighted they're going to put a very substantial investment into MP Materials. Their share price has gone up substantially lately. I believe they're in excess of a $10 billion market cap at this stage. So with that comes a lot of opportunity with Locksley and our tenure, which is in arguably a very hot and attractive environment with lots of geological potential. Key highlights are we've got drilling applications approved for El Campo, and we plan to be drilling late in the September quarter. We've also had our initial Desert Antimony drilling approval granted for some initial holes, but with recent work we've completed, we're looking to expand on that. And with the fundings that we have in the bank that we've just announced today in our quarterly report, we're well placed to fund that activity that we've got scheduled. And in addition, funds that we bring in from the raise that I've just mentioned that's occurring from today will further bolster and support our funding for activity on those programs and subsequent work in the event of the results that we get from the program we're undertaking. There's extensive infrastructure and easy highway access. You can see on the image, there's the highway running through the middle. This runs on the south edge of our North Block. That connects us through to Las Vegas. It's only about a 45-minute drive away, just over the border to Nevada. And there's abundant access to power and water, etc., in the vicinity, as well as the substantial infrastructure in place at Mountain Pass mine. So just moving a bit more into the technical aspects of the project, we've identified multiple rare earth element targets across the claim area, and these have been identified through previous stream sediment sampling, rock chip sampling campaigns that we've conducted across the areas. And if any investors would like more information on that, please look at our website. You'll be able to see the releases that are associated with that. We had some initial sampling completed at the El Campo prospect with returning very high-grade results. That initial sampling delivered grades in the range of 3.7 to 9.5% TREO within a 6 metre mineralised zone. And they also included results up to as high as 3.2% NdPr, which is key for magnet applications. Subsequent sampling campaign of further rock chips saw results up to a very, very high 12.1% TREO, which was within and along the mineralised horizon that we've identified at El Campo. In some subsequent slides, I'll go a little bit more detail into the geology and the findings that we've determined from work that we've been completing. I mentioned in the previous slide that we've got a drilling approval received from the Bureau of Land Management, the regulatory body in the US, for operating on federal lands, and that has granted us 5 initial holes at El Campo. And again, in a subsequent slide, I'll show where they're located. At the Mojave Desert Antimony Project, this is certainly an area that I see a lot of potential in moving forwards very rapidly. The high-grade antimony and polymetallic results that we've encountered are shown on the map there on the left-hand side. Again, this was from some series of rock chip sampling, float sampling that we undertook in a previous exploration campaign. If you look in the core area where all the pink dots are there, you can see antimony results up to as high as 46.1%. If you can see my cursor, it's in this area, as well as rock chip samples, outcrop samples up to over 30%. And within this area, there's historical mine workings. So the area was mined in the early part of the 20th century. There's some stopes there, there's a shaft there. The shaft goes down to about 30 meters, so that's about 100 feet. And there's a number of adits which also enter in across from the hillside. The trend of the veins that we've identified from work that we've completed is shown here with the northeast striking structures, and that's really building in a mineralized corridor which we're working within. There is an east-west orientation feature as well, which we've seen and identified through some mapping work that we've completed. At this stage, we're uncertain whether that in itself is a mineralized corridor or an offsetting structure, and our drill program is designed to test that. Really, one of the key things and the key opportunities I think here is that we haven't seen any evidence of any prior drilling undertaken at this project. We've just seen the evidence of historic mining. The mining is clearly a very strong indicator of the mineralization and the high grade that is evident there. And the drilling program we're going to undertake will certainly give us a lot more information and hopefully give us the opportunity to, in future campaigns, define a resource. Just a quick slide to show what this will look like. So we're working towards an additional plan of operations, which is to be submitted for an expanded larger drilling program. The initial approval that we received through was for a few holes located from one pad, which are shown here in the phase 1, this green hole here. Recently, we had a structural geologist go out to site and spend 4 days with our geologist who's based in the US working through this area. From the conclusion of that work, what we've identified is a broader mineralization target zone, this orange area here that we see. The reason we've defined that is because within that zone, we've identified a number of quartz calcite stibnite veins. Of course, carbonate stibnite veins, which is where the mineralization is hosted and those high-grade rock chips have come from. They've been interpreted and modeled as red, but they occur within this broader zone. And we've identified this broader zone because we see these veins anastomosing, which means that they move around, they can stop, they can start, they can link. And in the absence of subsurface drilling data, we see that as a broader target horizon. So we want to make sure that our drill holes cross through those areas. What you can see on this isometric view, which means it's sort of looking at an angle towards to the northwest, is a series of blue planned holes. So this is a combination of work putting together the model in 3D, working with the structural geologist, working with Locksley's geologists, and then systematically working through and going, well, if we've got this model, how are we best going to test it? Where do we see these veins occurring? And we've designed these number of holes. So you can see here a suite of holes. Some have multiple holes from one pad, others just have a single hole from a pad, but they're testing that broader structural corridor, as well as some of these deeper, longer holes that we have on the left-hand side of the image here. They'll be testing through that east-west position that I mentioned on the previous slide, as well as pushing through into this northeast-southwest mineralized target zone. So those holes will test both opportunities, whether there's east-west mineralized mineralized zone or not, but we'll also test the broader mineralization target zone. So I'm very excited about the opportunities this project will bring. This amount of drilling should give us a very substantial opportunity to get an understanding of the geology and hopefully carry the project forward. So moving down to the El Campo area. El Campo is where we've got the high-grade TREOs. So the image on the left here shows the rock chip samples with up to that very high grade of 12% that we have in rock chips. So this has been from a minor cutting and a bit of outcrop here. The mineralization presents itself as a breccia. It occurs within a long 860-meter prospective horizon. The structural mapping that I mentioned we completed at Desert Antimony. We then had the structural geologist move down into this area and undertake a few days mapping in this environment. And what he realized from that is the breccia that we have encountered the mineralization in here appears to be steep dipping. It means it's nearly vertical. It's about 80 degrees to the southwest, while the orientation of the rocks in the area is actually much shallower at about 40 degrees. Why we think this is important and has relevance? Well, firstly, the opportunity with something steep dipping and the narrow widths we have means that it will stay firmly within our claims throughout the strike length. And secondly, if these tenor of grades, that could potentially lend itself to a form of underground mining if it's continuing in a steep dipping fashion. And we want steep dipping rocks to be able to underground mine. So that's way ahead of where we are with the drilling program, but we're just thinking forwards in terms of if we get positive results, the realistic opportunities that could be presented in terms of potentially extracting rare earth mineralization from this prospect. The prospecting pits have been developed on a gossan. A gossan is the iron-stained rocks that we see here, and we see that gossan extend to the northwest with the oxide zone shedding down slope, which seems to disappear underneath the scree slope. Again, that was supported from our mapping. The mapping work that we completed worked essentially along the trend of mineralization in the northern part of the tenure here, all the way up to a zone which we have called the South Fault. The South Fault is an east-west trending structure, and our breccia mineralization appears to be truncated at that point. We believe the South Fault could be a prospective target in its own right. That's conceptual at this stage. We haven't got any samples from within it that confirm or disprove that there's mineralization there. But again, our drilling that we're planning and we've had approval for is seeking to test that position. The South Fault has relevance because the South Fault is part of the regional structural environment which dislocates our claim area from Mountain Pass to the northwest. There is a series of number of structures through that area, but again, it all sits within part of the regional geological setting. So we're certainly excited to be testing that target as well. So one of the key things I think that's have significant relevance for investors in Locksley is the global environment for, initially I'll talk about antimony. You can see here on the right-hand side, it's an image that shows the historic workings from the 1930s, the high-grade vein that was extracted there. The antimony price has seen a serious price appreciation over the past 12 to 24 months, primarily driven by Chinese export restrictions. China is the largest global producer of antimony, and they imposed these export restrictions, which had a positive impact on the price due to limited supply. There is a significant lack of US production. There's no active US antimony mines at the moment. And there's one antimony producing smelter facility within the country, and that's about 600 miles north, I believe, of the Desert Antimony Mine. So that could be an opportunity for us to leverage into in the future should we be successful with discovery of this project. We expect to see increased demand from the defence sector, especially given the geopolitical conditions and the consumption of munitions and supplies, especially with the war in Ukraine. So that demand will continue to provide the support for the price, as well as the critical mineral designation. So the US is prioritizing antimony supply, onshoring, to use the words that have been pushed around within the US. And they see that as essential and critical for both economic and national security. So there's a lot of strong indicators in the current environment that the antimony price is going to remain robust. And at these prices, it certainly provides a lot of opportunity with the Desert Antimony Mine. So to look to wrap that up for investors who are looking to be involved with Locksley, we're a US-focused antimony and rare earth explorer. There are significant geopolitical and supply chain implications under US and China trade restrictions. One of the key drivers for Locksley has been the US policy shift since the change in administration at the beginning of the year. In March, a 2025 executive order was signed, which fast-tracks domestic mining of critical minerals. And we've benefited significantly from that and moved rapidly with our submissions for drilling activity. The previous administration, it made it much more challenging to get those permits through. Certainly a lot of the red tape appears to now be removed, and hence that's recognised in the quick advance that we've had with our drilling approvals coming forwards. We're in a tier 1 location, only 1.4 kilometres from Mountain Pass, which is the only rare earth producer in North America. And we've got exceptional grades, so up to 12% TREO at the Campo prospect, as well as up to 46% in float samples from antimony, from float samples at the Desert Antimony Mine, both of which are on the US critical minerals list. There's also a large support of federal backing, and we're currently engaged with speaking to a number of federal agencies to see what support that we can receive for the advancement of our project, and as well as other agencies which are looking to provide support to critical mineral projects, both from a research perspective, as well as from just getting funds invested into the ground to look to grow these projects, but also looking at the metallurgy and way that we can improve access as well as be involved in the downstream processing aspect of things. So that's something that we're very focused on within the company. We have a dedicated person who we've employed that is following those aspects, and we hope to be successful in receiving government support from the US in backing our projects. So bringing all these together, I see significant valuation upside. It's certainly worth mentioning that we did conduct a raise a couple of months ago. I think we raised at 4 cents, and the price has been as high as 14 cents. Currently trading about 10.5 cents when we went in the hole today. So been very successful in the back of the previous raise. And due to the opportunities on the ground, the expanded programs I've talked about, and the interest that we've had, we've seen a significant benefit in looking to bolster our cash position with the raise of the trading hold that we've got in today. And that will get us well advanced with the drill programs that we have planned, plus subsequent follow-up work. So with that, thank you very much for your time, and I'll open the floor to questions. Stuart.
Julian, thank you. Fantastic presentation as always. We did have some questions come through as suggested earlier, so we'll get straight onto those now. What specific geological features led you to interpret the 860 metres prospective REE horizon at El Campo, and how confident are you in its continuity undercover?
Yes, look, that's certainly a good question. I touched on it in our slides there, Stuart. Initially, we had the sampling of the breccia at the southern end of the trend. We've got the Gossen. We saw that trending up into the northwest direction. There are a series of trench areas and samples which are in our previous releases to the northwest, which showed that whilst the highest grade was sampled in the southern end of that trend, we saw grades moving to the northwest. Probably critically, what's bolstered our knowledge and support there is the structural mapping that I've talked about. So having that detailed structural mapping work, bringing a geological model together. We've got a 3D model, again, that's been put out in one of our recent announcements that shows how we pulled the geology together. Interestingly, from that model, there is certainly some form of level of interpretation that the trenching to the northwest, which didn't quite have as high grades as we'd seen in the best area, but potentially those trenches were actually located a little bit too far to the west and didn't overlap the key breccia zone. So a combination of the sampling that we've undertaken, mapping of the geology, good boots on the ground work has given us confidence that we've got a strong target over that 860 metres or so strike length.
And how does the mineralisation style at El Campo compare with the nearby Mountain Pass mine in terms of host lithology, alteration, and rare earth bearing phases?
Yeah, so the geological setting, we're within the same geological block or domain as Mount Pass. We sit in this northwest striking regional area. There's a number of structural features which I mentioned when I was talking through the presentation that this link or connect through within that block. We have reference to a series of phonotype intrusions in the area, which we've seen in regional mapping data conducted by other parties. So that provides support. Interestingly, we see some of those potentially expanding into our North Block claims, and those carbonatites are interpreted to have a significant impact on the source of mineralisation at Mountain Pass. And we do have more work to do in terms of petrology and the like, and that's something that we'll be looking to do on the drilling results when we've got drilling samples in the event we get that. But there's a lot of similarities to the structural environment and setting, which gives us strong encouragement.
What drilling methods and sampling protocols will be used for the rare earth and antimony programs? And how are you mitigating contamination and preserving sample integrity?
Look, we'll employ RC drilling. That's what we're intending to do at this stage. That will give us a broad framework across the prospects and targets. You can't beat diamond drilling, but what we would like to do at this stage is just get a broad coverage across the prospective zones and look to get some results. Sampling methods with RC drilling is just very industry standard, where we'll have a cyclone, which is a splitter which occurs on the side of the rig. It reduces the sample from the big 30-odd kilos we get down to about 4 or 5 kilos for an individual sample for analysis. We're currently speaking to laboratories at the moment about the best sampling method, analysis method. We will probably look to undertake maybe an acid digest initially. But what I expect is if we get very high grade antimony numbers, and high grade in terms of the lab's context is deemed anything over 1%, what happens then is it goes for another analytical method to give you the true value, and that uses a fusion method where essentially your sample is mixed and formed into a fused bead, and usually do something like an XRF finish on that. In terms of avoiding contamination, again, typical standard approaches with drilling. We will complete a drill hole. As we're drilling, the drillers have to clean out the cyclone, reduce any risks of contamination, and as always, we'll incorporate an amount of standards, blank and duplicate for quality control. All of this will be explained in detail in our JORC table when we release the results from the drilling.
And given the historical workings of the Desert Antimony Mine, how are you planning to verify the continuity of the quartz, calcite, stibnite veins at depth? Is structural mapping or downhole geophysics part of the plan?
Yeah, so first and foremost was the structural mapping. So we did the surface mapping. There's also the opportunity to have a look at in the historical workings, and that's something we'd like to do more of. So do an assessment of the underground adits that connect through. That'll be the best exposure that we'll get to actually understand the geology. So I think we're looking at doing some future work there, making sure it's safe, being able to get in there. In terms of determining the continuity, well, that's the drill bit. That's that expanded drilling program that I referred to through the presentation. That is a program that's well designed in order to test for the down dip and the strike continuity of mineralization as a bit of a first pass go, but it is quite a comprehensive program. It's going to test well over 200 meters of strike of mineralization. Yeah, so bringing those factors together will really build us a strong structural and geological model, and I'm optimistic that we'll be successful with the drill.
And what are your early stage metallurgical assumptions or plans for testing rare earth and antimony recoveries? And how does this tie into potential downstream US processing partnerships?
Okay, I'll start on the antimony. Antimony, we know from the samples that we've collected, what we've seen, the antimony is hosted in what's called stibnite. It's an antimony sulfide mineral. There's pretty common and well-known processing pathways for that, and it's usually a flotation method. We certainly envisage taking some of our drill samples that we collect, some of the RC chips, and looking to engage a metallurgical laboratory to undertake some preliminary metallurgical test work and ascertaining if we can just produce a float. My gut feel, and from my experience, tells me that we should be successful in that approach. It doesn't look particularly complicated in the metallurgy aspects at Desert Antimony. For the rare earths, that'll be a little bit more of an advanced processing requirement. So we'll be seeking to get some advice on that as the best pathway of testing to undertake. But again, the approach will be similar. We'll be collecting samples from the drilling, making sure that we retain through the mineralized zones sufficient samples to be able to distribute them to a metallurgical laboratory, which will engage and seek their expertise to look and ascertain both the distribution of minerals and the potential recovery. In terms of how this affects with downstream processing, I did touch on that in the slide. We're looking at opportunities engaging with research partners, universities and the like, that can look at what the opportunities are for those products that can be achieved through Desert Antimony and Campo, the rare earths down there, and looking at what opportunities there are for Locksley to be involved in and really develop a downstream processing stream and opportunity on top of providing the ore feed.
And Julian, last of the questions that came through overnight, how will Q3 2025 drill program be sequenced across the rare earth and antimony targets? And what are the technical milestones that will determine whether further infill or step out drilling is warranted?
Yeah, so in terms of scheduling, we envisage that we will probably embark on Desert Antimony first. So I mentioned through the talk the additional holes that we're looking to put in there. So we've just got some regulatory steps to move forward with that, but we don't have any problems. We've seen strong support from the BLM. So we'll look to expand that program. We're targeting getting earthworks commencing to lead into the drill program late in September. That's just a case of making sure that we can get everything organised and all the logistics in place. So once we complete the work at Desert Antimony, the drilling, we'll then move on to Campo and complete the 5 drill holes that we've had approved there. In terms of catalysts for follow-up work and activity, well, first and foremost, we would obviously want to be getting the drill results through. I envisage, given the design of the program we've put together at Desert Antimony, we'll be able to put together a geological model using the drill results. On the back of that, typical standard approach, this applies to Campo as well, is we would model up in 3D the mineralisation that's encountered, and on the back of that we can look at putting together a block model which is using statistics to estimate the metal content. Whether or not that's sufficient drill density to allow us to generate a JORC classified resource, that will only come subsequent to evaluating the data that we collect. But the best opportunity would be maybe there'd be sufficient drill density, and I think there possibly could be from the drill program designed at Desert Antimony. We may be able to get a rudimentary resource, and then on the back of that we can start looking at potential economics. If we do need more data, well, that will just feed into planning a follow-up drill program, and I'm confident that with the funding that we're looking to bring in, that we'll be able to fund subsequent drill programs in addition to the one we're about to commit.
Julian, thanks for that. That's all that's come through today. Some great questions from attendees, so thank you. Appreciate you taking part in the Q&A, and also a fantastic presentation earlier. For more information about Locksley Resources, you can head to the company website, locksleyresources.com.au, or you can follow the company's social media channels and join up to their recent investor centre. Julian, thanks again for taking part in today. Wishing you all the best, an exciting time for you and all involved, and look forward to speaking again soon.
Thanks, Stuart.
Thank you to everybody.